guys. So we are on chapter 10, Back Home Again, page 111. Okay, that was Tom's great secret. The plan to return home with his brother pirates and attend their own funeral. So that was his big thing. They had paddled over to the town on Saturday and slept in the woods at the edge of the village. At daybreak, so when the sun comes up, on Sunday, they crept into the church and finished their sleep in the gallery. So that's just like an entryway. It's kind of like the entrance to the church. There's probably like a little place where you can put your coats and your purses, and then go into the chapel or the place where people sit and listen to the minister. So that's what the gallery is. At breakfast on Monday morning, Aunt Polly was very loving to Tom, but he was busy chattering away with Sid about the events of the day before. After a while, Aunt Polly broke in. Sorry, I need to pause for just a second. Don't forget that on your piece of paper, you need to be writing anything that makes a character interesting, okay? So we're reading about Aunt Polly today, or in this chapter, I think. So if you find something interesting about Aunt Polly, make sure you write that down and put the page number so you can remember that, or remember where to find it. Okay? So don't forget to be doing that, alright? Okay. Sorry. So Tom was talking about Sid, about the event, or talking to Sid about what he had done the day before with the funeral. After a while, Aunt Polly broke in. So she said, "Hold on." She said, "Tom, I don't say it wasn't a fine joke to keep everybody suffering almost a week so you boys could have a good time. But it was a pity you were so hard-hearted. So your heart was hard, it wasn't soft, so he wasn't being nice. It was a pity you were so hard-hearted as to let me suffer so you let me think you were dead, and that wasn't nice. If you could come over to your own funeral, you could have come over and given me a hint, some way that you weren't dead. I suppose if you really loved me, you would have wanted to do that." This made Tom feel guilty. He had actually come to tell Aunt Polly that he was all right. He had even written her a note telling her just that. But instead of owning up to the truth, Tom made up a story of a dream he had on Jackson's Island. So he felt bad, and he was about to say, "Well, Aunt Polly, I did write you a note," but then he didn't. And so he makes up a dream that he had. "I dreamed I was right here in this very room, Aunt Polly. Mrs. Harper was here too." So remember, that's Joe's mom. "The two of you were crying and saying how much you missed us. I think you were saying how even though we got into trouble, we were always kind-hearted boys." Tom gave such a perfectly detailed description of that unhappy night that Aunt Polly was truly amazed. This dream seemed to convince her that Tom had a special gift. She was so pleased that she took a big red apple from the cupboard and gave it to him to eat on the way to school. So he's pretending that he had a dream that he saw Aunt Polly and Mrs. Harper crying. But we know he actually went home and saw them crying, right? But Aunt Polly now thinks, oh, he has dreams. He has a special gift. He saw us somehow. Yeah, so he lied. Stinking Tom. So that could make Tom interesting. He's a liar. Okay? What a hero Tom had become. He did not go skipping and prancing, but moved with dignified swagger, as became a pirate who felt that the public eye was on him. So it's what we call strutting, right? So he's got a good walk and he's just like, yeah, I'm cool. And indeed it was, so everyone was watching him. Tom tried to ignore the looks and remarks as he passed people, but they were food and drink to him, so he loved them. He was enjoying every moment. Smaller boys flocked at his heels, and older boys were consumed with envy, so they were jealous of him. They would have given anything to have his swarthy, suntan skin and his sudden fame. At school, the children made such a fuss over Tom and Joe and gazed at him with admiration that the two heroes quickly became stuck up. So they thought they were cooler than everyone else. They told and retold their adventures to eager listeners, so people who really wanted to listen. To eager listeners who wanted to hear the whole story over and over again. Tom decided that he could be independent of Becky Thatcher now. He didn't need her. His fame and glory were enough. He would live for that alone. Now that he was so distinguished, maybe she would want to make up. Well, let her, he decided. She could try all she wanted. So he was too good for her now. When Becky arrived at school, Tom pretended not to see her. He moved away and joined a group of boys and girls and began to talk. Soon he noticed that Becky was tripping gaily back and forth, her face flushed and her eyes dancing. She pretended to be busy chasing schoolmates and screaming with laughter, so she's just playing games and acting like she doesn't notice him, but she's trying to get his attention. When Tom pretended not to see her at all, Becky came closer and once or twice glanced wistfully towards him. So she was just like, Tom, please look at me. That's what wistfully means. She didn't say it, but she looked that way. Soon, she noticed that Tom was talking to Amy Lawrence. She noticed that Tom was talking more to Amy Lawrence than to anyone else. She felt a sharp pang and grew disturbed and uneasy. In a moment of anger and jealousy, Becky announced that she was planning a party during the vacation. Soon, everyone was begging for invitations. Everyone, that is, except Tom and Amy. Tom just turned coldly away and took Amy with him, so he was not being nice to Becky. Becky's lips trembled, and tears came to her eyes. She hid these signs and went on talking gaily as happily. As soon as she could, she sneaked away by herself and burst into tears. She'd think of something to get even with Tom. At recess, Tom continued his flirtation with Amy, but only after he'd checked to see if Becky was still watching. When he looked across the schoolyard, he saw something that made his blood boil. It made him so mad. Becky was sitting cozily on a little bench looking at a picture book with Alfred Temple. So see how close they are? They're sitting cozily. They were so absorbed that their heads were almost touching. Jealousy ran red hot through Tom's veins. He began to hate himself for throwing away the chance Becky had offered for making up. By noon, Tom couldn't take it any longer, and he left school and ran home. See how I said he's a bad student because he skips school all the time? He just ran home again. He just skipped school. Anyway. Once Becky saw that Tom was no longer around, she lost all interest in Alfred and the picture book. She burst into tears, got up, and walked away. So, Becky was using Alfred to get back at Tom. So she was trying to make Tom jealous. She doesn't care about Alfred at all. Alfred ran after her, trying to comfort her, but she snapped, "Go away and leave me alone, can't you? I hate you." The boy stopped in amazement and wondered what he could have done. He was humiliated and angry once he figured out the truth, so he realized that she was using Alfred. She was using him to get at Tom. Becky had, it says it right here. Becky had simply used him to make Tom jealous, but he would get back at Tom. The question was, how? So he was more angry at Tom than Becky. Then he thought of the perfect way to do it. He went inside the classroom and found Tom's spelling book on his desk. He opened the lesson for the afternoon and poured ink all over the page. So back then they used to have what is called a quill. So it's like a feather, and at the tip you dip it in ink and you write that way. So there's the ink. So he ruined his book, which isn't nice. At that moment, Becky was glancing in through the window behind him. She saw the whole thing, but she moved on and said nothing. Do you think that's right? Like, she saw him do it, but she didn't say anything? So Becky started on her way home, intending to find Tom and tell him. Oh, she wanted to tell him. Tell him what Alfred had done. She hoped that Tom would be so thankful that all their troubles would be over. But before she was halfway home, she changed her mind. She thought back to the way Tom had treated her, and she was filled with anger. Let Tom get punished because of the damaged spelling book, she decided, and she also decided to hate him forever. So she ended up not telling Tom what Alfred had done. She was just like, Tom can get in trouble for it. I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, so something that makes Becky an interesting character. This is just an example. So one thing we really learn about her is she gets jealous, right? Jealous means that she's mad at Tom because he was playing with Amy instead of her. That's what jealous is. She's jealous of Amy because she wants Tom to be with her. She doesn't want Tom to be with Amy. So she's jealous of Amy. Okay? So jealous. That's page 118. And another thing that we learned about Becky that makes her kind of interesting, I don't know if you guys have heard of this before. It's the word cold-hearted. So heart is the heart, right? And cold we know is cold, frio, right? So her heart is cold. It's not warm. It's not hot. So when you say somebody is cold-hearted, it means they're mean. Like, they'll do anything to get back. Like, Becky will do anything to get back at Tom. She'll get Alfred to snuggle up with her, to cuddle with her, and she won't tell Tom that Alfred poured ink all over his book. Okay, so she's cold-hearted, and that's evidence that she's cold-hearted, and I can use a direct quote. So I could paraphrase by saying, Alfred poured ink all over Tom's spelling book, and Becky saw it. And then my quote, and then I could say, and Becky was going to tell Tom what Alfred had done. And then I could also use the direct quote. So I can paraphrase and use the direct quote. But before she was halfway home, she changed her mind. She thought back to the way Tom had treated her, and she was filled with anger. Let Tom get punished because of the damaged spelling book, she decided. And she also decided to hate him forever. So, okay, that's a big quote. That's a really big quote. So I could paraphrase and say, Alfred poured ink all over Tom's spelling book, and Becky saw it. Becky was going to tell Tom, but then she decided not to. And then I could do a direct quote. Let Tom get punished because of the damaged spelling book. In the book it says that Becky thought, let Tom get punished because of this damaged spelling book, she decided. And she also decided to hate him forever. That was kind of rough, I know that. But that's a direct quote you could use. That shows that Becky is cold-hearted. Okay, you can also do information about Tom, because Tom is kind of cold-hearted too, because he's hanging out with Amy and he's trying to make Becky jealous. Okay, so he's not being very nice either. Okay, and also he's cocky. He thinks he's really cool, right? Because of him being able to see his own funeral and all the boys think he's the coolest thing in the world. So he's really cocky right now. All right, so those are some things that you could write down. So don't forget, which character is the most interesting right now, and find some quotes for those characters, okay? All right.